about all the sectors. How about show of hands if you are with local or state government? Yay, welcome Columbia folks. Any feds here? Yay, okay, welcome. How about utilities? All right, and nonprofits. All right, great. And keep your hands up if you're a nonprofit that owns your own building or space. So some of you have your own spaces, campuses. Okay, great. Business, industry. All right. And some of you are wearing multiple hats. I mean, which I realize there's a lot of intersectionality here. Did I miss anybody? All right. Well, great. Well, welcome. So also just, if you haven't had a chance to stretch yet, how many of you, when I say Ira and Bill, think of a sweet old couple on rocking chairs sitting on the porch? All right. So how many of you are familiar with the Inflation Reduction Act, bipartisan infrastructure law, IJA, all of these different names? Is that just trying to figure out where we need to start here? I'm seeing a lot of nods. Okay. So hopefully you will learn something new. I'm going to attempt to give you some updates that maybe you don't know and just what are some of the opportunities. Also want to give a shout out to my intern Dylan, who's turning in virtually from WashU. I'm going to ask you if you heard this shout out later. So I know it's early. All right. So just briefly, who I am, why I'm here. So the Midwest Climate Collaborative launched back in 2022 following the first Midwest Climate Summit, which was bringing together folks from these 12 states across all the sectors just to talk about who's doing what on climate justice, mitigation, energy efficiency. And it brought together folks from government, higher ed, nonprofits, tribes, business, industry, utilities. And at the end of that, there was this recognition that, yes, there's a lot of time and money and attention spent on the coast. And these 12 states, if we were a country, would be the 5th largest emitter of greenhouse gas emissions on the planet. But do we get credit for that? Not really. I mean, and maybe it's a good thing, but there's so many opportunities here. And what works on the coast does not necessarily work in the Midwest. And so we have a lot of solutions here that work for us. We could be doing a better job sharing that information. We've got rural, urban, suburban, indigenous communities in these 12 states. There's a lot of expertise and knowledge to tap into. And so the collaborative was created to help build those connections, to really amplify what's working in our region, connect communities and organizations across sectors, as well as really help build capacity, because that's one thing we hear over and over again, is that there are a lot of us, especially in small rural communities, under-resourced, understaffed, spinning our wheels trying to solve the same problems. So we launched with this broad vision, carbon neutral, climate resilient, interconnected Midwest region. And these are our members. This is actually an old slide. I apologize if your organization has since joined and you're not on there. It's updated on the website, I swear. But overall, we've got about 70 plus members now. It's about half nonprofits, so some of those are small, doing weatherization, up to the National Audubon Society, a couple chapters of the Nature Conservancy, and then zoos and museums. And then we've got about a third higher ed institutions, and then about 14 local governments, and we've got one business up there so far as we explore what business membership looks like. And these are some of the projects we've got going on, so if there's anything else you want to explore after the conference, please feel free to reach out. I will mention this Climate Resource Network, and I'm sorry the address isn't up there, but the URL is midwestcrn.org, and that is a resource we've created because we heard from folks, when you Google, energy resources or climate action plans, all these things from the coast, again, show up, because a lot of us don't have PR departments to promote all the great things we're doing, but there are so many good resources out there that have been developed for communities in the Midwest. So like the state of Wisconsin just put out a consumer buyer's guide to heat pumps, like everything you need to know. That's great. If you're in Iowa or Missouri and you want to do something similar, you don't need to start from scratch, and you don't need to look at what they're doing in California. Take a look at what they're doing in Wisconsin and go from there. So there's all sorts of great resources on there. We're bringing researchers together, tracking climate commitments. This Federal Funding Fridays, I think that's probably the reason why I was asked to speak here today. We do host every 9 o'clock, every Friday at 9 a.m. And this started because of this federal funding question a little over a year ago, in May 2023. Lots of our members, people I was talking to, were just completely overwhelmed with all these federal funding opportunities. Like, Heather, there's so much money out there. And there's a webinar every other hour of the day that I could be watching, whether it's DOE or EPA or DOT. And I have a staff of one, and I'm supposed to figure out which grants I'm supposed to apply for. And there's all this technical assistance I could be applying. I could apply for the technical assistance so that I can apply for the grant. So we just started hosting these weekly gatherings, and it really is an opportunity to crowdsource intel, like, hey, I heard this grant is really for smaller communities, or I heard they're only going to give out so many of these. It's also a chance for people to share, like, I used this toolkit and it was actually really helpful, or this is the consultant I used, and give them a call. So we also commiserate over some of these crazy deadlines and then celebrate our successes. So just another resource in the region. So overall, and this is just big picture, how is this money flowing? So you've got formula grants. So these are the ones that non-competitive, if you meet the qualifications, there's a certain amount of money that's been set aside. You do have to apply for it. You have to put forth a program or a project that meets those qualifications. And these, again, non-competitive. So these are things like your EECBG, your energy efficiency and conservation block grant funds. There's also vouchers for technical assistance. So this is, we're sending our taxpayer dollars to Washington, D.C. They're setting this money out there on the table, and we just have to go get it. And there's your competitive grants, which a lot of us are probably very familiar with. These are, get your grant application together, cross your fingers, stay up all night, and hope you get some money. There's loans out there, and then tax credits, direct pay, a lot of things happening through the tax code, which I will cue Robert up for later. So one of the exciting things, I think, is that a lot of these funds before IRA and Bill, we're going from the feds to state agencies. And then if you're at the local level or you're a nonprofit, then you're following your state agency. This has opened up opportunities now. Federal money is flowing directly to cities, directly to nonprofits, directly to schools in ways that they haven't before. So it's opened up a lot of opportunities. And for the folks, in some of those sectors there, that also means it's a lot more work. But that's why we're here today, to talk about how we can handle this problem, because this is how a lot of us feel. If this is the reality check, if you've been trying to navigate any of these federal opportunities, if you're applying for them, if you're trying to follow the different technical assistance, there's a new toolkit being released like every other day. And I know the folks in our federal agencies are doing everything they can, but sometimes I think they don't even talk to each other. I'm like, do you know that another toolkit just got released yesterday that's trying to do the same thing? There's a lot of stuff out there. And again, that's why I think communication, partnerships is so important, so that we don't feel like this dude. So one of the things, so these are just, some of the big ones that we'll talk about, but they just keep coming more and more and more. And so it's EPA, DOE, DOT, HUD, BIA, USDA. And it really is an unprecedented opportunity. We keep talking about that. And there is. So one, I just want to get across, there's a lot of money out there. And again, the formula grants are great. Competitive grants we'll talk about a little bit. And what we're seeing is, in the last year, these federal agencies have hired hundreds and hundreds of people to put together these programs, to review these grants. And so, if you are, one of those folks with the fire hose in your face pushing you off the side of a cliff or a boat or whatever it is, just know that there's a lot of communication, and there could be more going back and forth with these federal agencies, just to let them know that, yes, we want this money, but there are certain hurdles that we need to overcome. And there's a lot of new folks in the federal government, that are trying to put these programs together. And so the more communication, the more you can build up those relationships with, if it's Region 7, EPA, if it's with DOE, the SCEP Office of State and Community Energy Programs, is that what the EP is for? The more you talk to those folks, they so appreciate hearing from the people who are applying for these grants, because a lot of them are doing it for the first time, and they're trying to do it in a really tight timeline. And we all know what's happening in November. So everybody's just trying to figure out, like, there's a lot of uncertainty coming. And so they're trying to get a lot of money out the door. So where is this money going? And this is from the Climate Program Portal. If you're not familiar with this website, a lot of great information. They have grant opportunities, as well as tracking outcomes. You're not able to access the outcomes unless you register with them. If you have any questions, let me know. Happy to share information with you. So where it's going. So primarily state government. So $60 billion is flowing to state governments, and that's in grants having to do with air quality, transportation, solar for all is a big one, EV infrastructure, abandoned mine reclamation fund. The second one is the commercial and industry sector, getting about $29 billion. So that's for clean hydrogen hubs, advanced industrial facilities, advanced reactor demonstration programs, battery materials, that sort of thing. And then nonprofits, number 3 here, the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. There's a lot of investment coming through there. And then environmental justice, climate justice block grants, urban forestry. And then you've got public transportation agencies are receiving about $18.4 billion. local governments about 16 billion, schools, and then that little bitty green dot, that is residential programs actually. And I can't remember which exactly one that's through, but residential landscape scale restoration water quality. So there's quite a bit, 28 million going into that. So a lot of great information on this website if you're wanting to see where this money's going. So I track our 12 states in the Midwest region. And so I downloaded this data last week just to get an idea of how are we doing? How is Missouri doing in the scheme of things in the Midwest and as well as nationally? So you can see here in our Midwestern states, you've got Illinois is over the $6 billion mark in terms of what they've been bringing in. And this is awarded and allocated. So some of this is money that's already been awarded, but then there's, whether it's formula grants, or other funds that have been allocated but not yet awarded. So you might look at other sources of data and just know that this is both. You've got Michigan and Ohio, they're in that around the $5 billion mark. And then, we've got Missouri, we're just a little over $2 billion. And then you can see how some of our other neighboring states are doing there. And just kind of in context, number one, the state who's brought in the most, $21 billion, California, and then New York, $15 billion. New Hampshire is $580 million. So we're right there in the middle. However, as a percentage of the national total, so the Midwest makes up those 12 states. We're about a quarter of the country's population, over a quarter of emissions, and this is the percent of the pie that we are bringing down right now. And if you break that down into our 12 states, you can see Illinois, Michigan, Ohio, Indiana doing pretty well. Missouri's right there in the middle. And you can see here how much has been awarded so far, about 1.6 billion, and we've got another, a little over $500 million, hopefully yet to come. And I know this is kind of hard to read. This is just a breakdown by kind of topic. So transit and rail is getting the most so far, with electrification, climate finance coming after that. And then ag and education are up there at the top. This is another map of some clean energy projects. This is from E2, which is a nonpartisan national nonprofit of business leaders and investors. And so they've got an interesting map here of some of the projects they're tracking. And you can see there's 3 in Missouri that they have on their map. And these are around batteries and solar. And so I'm going to just talk about a few of these big ones. Some of these have been awarded. And so you might want to know about them because, how do you tap into this funding? And then some of these are still yet to come. As we go over these, are folks familiar with Justice 40? Yeah, seeing some nods. So this is that, 40% of the benefits from these federal funds need to be going to disadvantaged communities. And there's a variety of tools, CGEST being one of them, to help identify where are these, disadvantaged communities. So Solar for All is one of those. Oh, did I go? There we go. So Solar for All is one of the big ones. So this was $27 billion across the country. It was a competitive grant, and it's really looking to set up lasting statewide solar programs. And so on behalf of the state of Missouri, EIRA, Environmental Improvement and Energy Resources Authority, really fun to say, they're the folks who applied, and they were awarded about $156 million. And so you can go to their website, track this program is in development, but they will be doing that work through forgivable loans to enable solar adoption, low interest loans through a revolving loan fund, and mobilization of financing, private capital into solar projects, and then residential distributed solar storage and community solar. So you can, sign up to get on their mailing list so you can follow when these opportunities are coming out. St. Louis and I believe Kansas City were also part of a multi-city coalition, the Heartland and Industrial Heartland Solar Coalition. So this involved 31 cities across, I think, 8 states. They did not receive nearly as much as they had requested. So they also received about $156 million. So St. Louis and Kansas City will be part of that coalition. They're still figuring out, since they didn't receive as much as they had requested, how that money is going to get split across all of those different cities. But that's another one to be following. And this information is very dynamic. So if anybody's sitting here and they're like, Heather, they just made an announcement, or this is now different or changed, feel free to raise your hand and I will pass you the mic, because this is really, again, how can we just crowdsource our intel so we can just get as much money as we can for these projects in our state? So CPRG, Climate Pollution Reduction Grants, is another big one. And the way this rolled out, are folks familiar with this? some nods. So this one is set. This one had an initial opt-in. So essentially, there's money on the table. Come get it. Every state could get $3 million for climate action planning, and then they also had another tier for local governments, metropolitan statistical areas to also apply. They could get about $1 million to do their own climate action planning. And that's broken down into two phases. They created priority climate action plans, and those have been submitted, and those are all available, all online. And then they're now working on these comprehensive climate action plans, CCAPs, which are due next year. In the middle of that, they opened up $4.6 billion of funding for projects that are in line with those identified priorities. If anybody participated in this round of grants, I applaud you. It took hours and hours, months probably of people's lives, and nobody in Missouri got one. But that's not the end of the story. So they did end up issuing about 25 of these across the country. They had 300 some applications, and these applications are full of projects. I'm not going to say shovel ready, different levels of shovel readiness, but people spent a lot of time designing these projects, getting community feedback, and putting them together into these very robust proposals. And most of them did not get funded. So where do we go from here? I think this is the time when we really need to be inviting private industry, business, philanthropy to the table to say, look, these projects have already been put together. They've been designed. The communities have said, this is what we want. They're ready to go. We just need to start matching up funding to them. So if you are looking to invest, or your organization, your business is looking to invest in a community, I mean, anything from solar, storage, energy efficiency, waste management, there are upgrades at state parks that were included in Missouri's plan, EV fleet work, sustainable agriculture, institutional building upgrades. I mean, if you're if you are interested in investing in any of those things, there are plans ready to go. And I think there's a lot of opportunity here in this particular program. For the state of Missouri's plan was put together by the Air Quality Division at DNR. St. Louis East-West Gateway put together, sorry, the PCAP. They did not, the actual plan with the projects that was submitted was put together by DNR. But St. Louis and Kansas City are also working on their own action plans through their regional planning folks. So that's CPRG. And I could talk all day about that one. So find me later if you're really into CPRG. So the next one, Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, which this includes Solar for All, as well as a couple of other funding streams. And so one of them is, this is the National Clean Investment Fund. And through this, there are three funders who were three awardees, essentially, for this National Clean Investment Fund. So the first two I've got here, Power Forward Communities and Coalition for Green Capital. Power Forward Communities is going to be investing $2 billion as a national financing program for single-family and multifamily housing owners and developers, and for things like heat pumps, induction stoves, electric dryers, rooftop solar. Their website lists Missouri partners as Kansas City, the KC Building Energy Exchange, and St. Louis County. The Coalition for Green Capital, this is $5 billion to operate the first U.S. national green bank through loans, guarantees, credit enhancements, equity investments, and the Missouri Green Bank is listed on their website as well. So you definitely want to be following these folks. Again, these programs are in development, but this is how a lot of this money is going to be moving into our communities. The third one is the Climate United Fund, the biggest one. This is $7 billion. This will be investments in energy efficiency homes, electrification upgrades, solar installations, and 20% is going to be invested in rural communities. So I think that's something for us really to follow. And again, you can go to these websites. I visit them, I sign up for all of their newsletters because there's so much information. It's coming out fast and furious, and a lot of these timelines are tight. So, if you're interested in any of these, definitely follow these folks. The third piece of the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, so there was Solar for All, the National Clean Investment, and then there's a third one, I don't have a slide for it, but the Clean Communities Investment Accelerator, that was $6 billion to 5 recipients, and that's providing technical assistance to community lenders working in low income and disadvantaged communities. Y'all still with me so far? I know it's a lot. I'm not going to talk too much about this one because I think maybe Nora is going to talk about this one later. So these are home energy rebates for energy efficiency and electrification. Again, this is a formula funding opportunity. So the state of Missouri, let's see, I think about 151 million has been allocated, and the state's received 3.8 million so far to work on the for the early administrative funding. So 3.8 million to put together their project, which will then go up for approval. And you can see on here, again, I'm not going to go into the details, but that's part of the criteria for the program, getting more energy efficiency rebates to homes and also for electrification. This is what's in the law, what's available. We don't know what Missouri's program will look like yet, but there is a really great tracker. This is on the DOE's home energy rebates page. So those states in green, Wisconsin and New York, they've had their programs approved and their rebates have launched. They're available. The states in orange, their applications have been approved. The states in blue have submitted their applications, and then in gray are the ones who have not yet submitted the applications, but I believe those are due at the end of January. So stay tuned, and we'll hear more about that later today, I'm sure. So that's just, tip of the iceberg in terms of what's available out there in terms of the money that's going to be coming. And it's, there's the opportunity, and then again, there's, sub folks, there's going to be secondary timelines in terms of this money getting out and actually reaching communities. So some of the resources that I have found really helpful, this is just a short list, but Environmental Protection Network, they're a nonprofit. They provide pro bono assistance to local governments, to tribes, to nonprofits. So if you've got questions about, should I even go after this grant? How do I put this together? How do I identify the technical disadvantaged community? You can use their intake form. They're broken down by region. So the Region 7 folks are really wonderful, very helpful. They attend our federal funding Fridays often. They also have templates for different grants. The community change grants is a big one that's coming up for nonprofits. If you have not submitted your application, get it in ASAP. It's technically due November 21st. But they've told everybody, get it in by August 1st if you can. But there are templates available through Environmental Protection Network. The State Funding Readiness Project is another one that's providing pro bono technical assistance to states, local governments, nonprofits, so look them up. And then there's a variety of cohorts, the National Labs, DOE, Great Plains Institute, USDN, if you're a local government, their Federal Infrastructure Hub, they're launching another one of their cohorts, and those are on specific topics usually. So if you're interested specifically in EV infrastructure, for example, they'll put you in a cohort. RMI is another good one. Lawyers for Good Government's got great resources on tax questions. The other thing that RMI has is this clean growth tool. And it's cleangrowthtool.rmi.org. You can just Google it, but they help MSAs, metropolitan statistical areas, and economic areas identify opportunities for clean growth in their region. So they have this interactive map. Sorry, I didn't get a chance to get it up here, but it shows the feasibility of transition into different sectors. And they also have a workforce analysis that they do. And you can zoom in on Missouri. It's a really helpful tool. Also, Electrification Coalition, they have an EV funding finder. So that's another good one. And I'm sorry it didn't make it up here, the Electrification Coalition. And then finally, the University of Michigan has a funding opportunities and tax incentives tracker, which they keep pretty up to date. And it's broken down by sector, deadline, match, all those things you want to know before you spend a lot of time on an application. All right, so key takeaways. I hope I have some time for you. So yeah, there's funding out there, whether you work on housing, infrastructure, weatherization, public health, it's out there. You don't have to use the C word. This money is out there for so many things. There are resources available to help apply for funds. It's so important that you build partnerships across sectors. So many of these grants are looking for that multi-sector partnership or multi-jurisdictional partnership. So, utilizing your universities, they can be tremendous assets when it comes to whether it's technical assistance. Also, universities write a lot of these grants. So if you're a nonprofit and you're thinking about how to get this done, there are just, layers and layers of people at the university level who have submitted federal grants. So I say lean on them. Follow the funders. So, you didn't apply to the federal government and whew, lucky you, but now there's money that is channeling through other organizations, through other agencies. So follow them. Usually the application process is going to be much simpler than going directly to the federal government. You're welcome to join a federal funding Friday. It's on our website at the Midwest Climate Collaborative. That's open every Friday, 9 a.m. And I think, especially if you are thinking about competitive grants, I think you just have to like look at this, look at the map, look at where the money's going. The states who have been doing this work are getting more of the money. The folks who have prepared themselves, states like Minnesota and Wisconsin, like they opened new agencies, they hired new people whose job it was to go after this federal money. And so if you're thinking about a competitive grant, just think about where you're starting, and then think about direct pay, which is what I want to queue up here next, because that is a non-competitive opportunity. Another great way to tap into federal funds to get your clean energy efficiency projects done. That's my contact info. Happy to talk to anybody afterwards, because I talk about this stuff way too much, as you can see. So thank you very much, and hopefully we'll have time for questions at the end. If not, I'm here all week. So I hope you all learned something new.
Thank you, Heather. All right. Good morning.